Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. We are continuing with William Walker Atkinson's book, Thought Vibration. We are on chapter 3, my friends. Let's go ahead and dive in. Chapter 3, A Talk About the Mind. I'm reading from my screen. I don't have a physical book of this. Man has but one mind, but he has many mental faculties. We talked about the mental faculties, I believe, last time we were together, my friends. And I have a visual of it right here. Don't you worry. Here we go. We have the higher faculties, and I can't see myself. Let's find here. We have perception, the will, reason, imagination, memory, and intuition. These are our higher faculties of the mind that reside, our higher faculties, in our conscious thinking mind. We have 5 physical senses of the lower senses. See, hear, smell, taste, touch, the 5 senses that other animals on this planet have. But it's these puppies right here that cause us to be the apex creature and create anything we desire, okay? Man has but one mind, but he has many mental faculties, each faculty being capable of functioning along 2 different lines of mental effort. There are no distinct dividing lines separating the 2 several functions of a faculty, but they shade into each other, as do the colors of a spectrum. An active effort of any faculty of the mind is the result of a direct impulse imparted at the time of the effort. A passive effort of any faculty of the mind is the result of either a preceding active effort of the same mind, an active effort of another along the lines of suggestion, thought vibrations from the mind of any other, thought impulses from an ancestor transmitted by the laws of heredity. This is wild. Wasn't this book written in 1906, we said? He's talking about epigenetics, y'all. Because our cells carry information, quite literally. Besser van der Kolk is an amazing scientist, I believe, when it comes to the world of psychology and biology, really. And he wrote a book that I'm sure you're familiar with, and if you're not, please look it up. It's called Your Body Keeps the Score, or The Body Keeps the Score. And it's kind of like we talked about how your body, like your brain is programming your body through the mind. Like the mind activates the brain and then the brain tells the body what to do. So the brain, the mind, the subconscious mind, it gives orders to the brain, which runs the body. And so every thought we think in our mind, we keep firing and wiring those neurotransmitters in our brain, and then the chemicals get bathed and train our bodies to behave certain ways, for the nervous system to act certain ways, to take certain actions. Like we don't do anything unless our body tells us to do it. But what, activates the body, it's the mind. So every thought you think is a vibration. It's an impulse. So every thought you think in the mind gives orders to the brain, then the brain talks to the body, and then the body goes. And so what he's saying is, I was going back to epigenetics. So when you are in your mother's womb, you are all up in her vibrations, and you're up in the vibrations of everybody else around, the energies, even though you're in that womb. But her cells have been programmed. Her vibration is programming you, and her mom and parents programmed her, and your dad's, the information in his sperm programmed him. So this is epigenetically passed down. Epi means above just genetics. It's energetics, imprints that get passed on. That's why there's transgenerational trauma. This is a great story. I've told it many times here, but it has to do with the mice experiment. I believe it's in one of Dr. Joe Dispenza's book. You know what? Let me see if I can find my slide. I did a presentation for, I'm not sure what company. Let's see. We can do hard things. Let's just see. There it is. I found it. It'll pop up like toast. I hope I'm not freezing. Here we go. Actually, yeah, well, this is just a picture. But let's watch it together. Let's read it together, rather. There's a couple slides. Ooh, let's bring a couple slides up. Yes. you're getting a little mini class here on epigenetics that William Walker Atkinson is talking about in this book, Thought Vibration. My goodness. We're in for a treat today, y'all. We are in for a treat today. Pardon me while I open this up. Okay, fantastic. All right, let's share screen and let's look at this together. All right. What is epigenetics and how does it relate to child development? Epigenetics is an emerging area of scientific research that shows how environmental influences, children's experiences, actually affect the expression of their genes. This means the old idea that genes are set in stone has been disproven. Nature versus nurture is no longer a debate. It's nearly always both. During development, the DNA that makes up our genes accumulates chemical marks that determine how much or how little of the gene is expressed. This collection of chemical marks is known as the epigenome. The different experiences children have rearrange those chemical marks. This explains why genetically identical twins can exhibit different behaviors, skills, health, and achievement. So that is how we were all imprinted, y'all. So let's look at the next slide here. This is, I don't know what this one says. Let's read it together. Previous studies have hinted that stressful events can affect the emotional behavior or metabolism of future generations, possibly through chemical changes to the DNA that can turn genes off and on, a mechanism known as epigenetic inheritance. There you go. That's that slide. And then, yeah, I'll save this one for the last. So this book, it's called Emotional Inheritance, and let's look at it together. This talks about, let me zoom in a little bit. Oopsie, how do I, okay. So it's from Emotional Inheritance. Starting in the 1970s, neuroscience validated the psychoanalytical findings that survivors' trauma, even the darkest secrets they never talked about, had real effect on their children's and grandchildren's lives. Those relatively new studies are focused on epigenetics, the non-genetic influences and modifications of gene expression. They analyze how genes are altered in the descendants of trauma survivors and study the ways in which the environment, and especially trauma, can leave a chemical mark on person's genes that is passed down to the next generation. That empirical research emphasizes the major role that stress hormones play in how the brain develops, and thus in the biological mechanisms by which trauma is transmitted from generation to generation. It goes in to talk about the Holocaust survivors have lower levels of cortisol, a hormone that helps bounce back after trauma. It was found that descendants of people who survived the Holocaust had different stress hormone profiles than their peers, perhaps predisposing them to anxiety disorders. Research indicates the healthy offspring of Holocaust survivors, as well as of enslaved people, of war veterans, and of parents who experienced major trauma, are more likely to present symptoms of PTSD after traumatic events or after witnessing a violent incident. Wait, I think I read one of these parts wrong. So a large body of research done at the Atkinson, I don't know if I'm saying that right, School of Medicine at Mount Sinai Hospital by Dr. Rachel Yedua, Director of Traumatic Stress Studies, and her team reveals that the offspring of Holocaust survivors have lower levels of cortisol, a hormone that helps the body. Oh, so they have lower levels of cortisol, a hormone that helps the body bounce back after trauma. So their offspring were predisposed to anxiety disorders because they had less cortisol to help them balance their stress and anxiety. Isn't that wild? So these chemical markers can be passed down that are imprinted in the genes. And this last slide is what I was referring to as it is just an image of the mouse, the mice experiment. I know it's very sad. In laboratories, they took male mice and they put them in a cage and they would zap them with an electric shock. And then they would blow the scent of cherry blossoms into the cage. And they did this to condition the mice to associate the shocks, the electrical shocks, with the smell of cherry blossoms. So they would, I believe they would whiff the cherry blossoms in and then shock the mice. So they would whiff the cherry blossom smell in, they would shock the mice would run to the corner and cower, from being afraid of the shocks, electrical shocks. Well, they did this over and over, and then they took out the electrical shocks, thank goodness. However, they continued to blow the cherry blossoms in, and when they did that, the mice reacted the same because they were anticipating the shock and the fear, and they would still run in the corner, even though they weren't being electrically shocked. Now, the next part is they mated the mice, the male mice, with the female mice, and their offspring they studied, because the male mice had imprinted these chemical imprints, and then their sperm carried these when they impregnated the female mice. Then the offspring had a reaction to cherry blossoms. They actually had larger olfactory sensors or extra sensors and extra sensitivity to the smell of cherry blossoms. Isn't that wild? To be able to smell it because it was a threat. Their body had encoded it as cherry blossoms was a threat, because that is how their fathers were programmed and conditioned. Isn't that crazy? So, when we talk about these sensitivities to anxiety or predisposition, like to depression or even addiction, I'm open about my addiction, and my grandfather was an addict, and who knows down the lineage, but it ran in my family, and it was no coinky dinky that I experienced that too. Thank God. I'm almost 7 years sober now. I always round up. I had my 6th year of sobriety in May, so I just turned 6 in my sobriety, but I'm on my 7th year, so I'll have 7 complete years next May. But I always say I'm on my 7th year of sobriety. But it's like that was passed down. The gene was passed down. And I was imprinted with that as a coping skill. Well, really high anxiety and then alcohol to cope. But isn't that crazy? What a side tangent. I hope you enjoyed that little TED Talk. But basically, William Walker Atkinson is saying, let's read this paragraph again. He says, an active effort of the faculty of the mind is the result of a direct impulse imparted at the same time of the effort. A passive effort of any faculty of the mind is the result of either a preceding active effort of the same mind, an active effort of another along the lines of suggestion. So he's saying the faculties of the mind are a direct impulse from an effort that we consciously give it, a passive effort that is given from our maybe subconscious mind, an active effort along the lines of a suggestion, thought vibrations from the mind of someone else from the outside, thought impulses from an ancestor transmitted by the law of heredity, including impulses transmitted from generation to generation from the time of the original vibration impulse imparted by the primal cause, which impulses gradually unfold and unsheathe when the proper state of evolutionary development is reached. That is cray cray. So thought vibration imprints our cells, and it's passed down until that vibratory pattern is disrupted or changed. So that's why we do in therapy, we do, what's it called? A genogram. You can do it's like a family tree, but it's like a family tree where you identify like both your mother's side and your father's side, and then their siblings, and then their parents, and then you just like mark, were they married? Were they divorced? Did they struggle with mental health, substance issues? And then you look at all your aunts and uncles, and then all your cousins, and you kind of just start to see patterns, and you're like, dang, my family's messed up. Or like you see patterns, it's like, oh my goodness, like how often do we ever even know or question like the history of our family? Like really look into it. And it's harder because like older generations didn't talk openly about their mental health or like substance abuse. It was just like in culturally too. It's like we just like think about like people who like Scottish or Irish or people where alcohol is just a more common, I mean, I don't mean to like, but like the whiskey and like, that's just what we do. And I've had clients, that's why I say that. And just people, right, that I know, that it's just so normalized. So it's not labeled an issue or like an alcohol abuse disorder or alcoholic. It's just like, that's what everybody does. You just drink till you black out every night, like or at parties or at Christmas. That's just what we do. It's like, is that what you do? That's a problem, But no one ever questions it. So even though there hasn't been official diagnosis, in your family, it's just like, look at the patterns. Uncle Joe was always really down. He was always sad. Like, was he chronically depressed? Two of my uncles overdosed or like were found, didn't wake up after sleeping pills. Did they commit suicide? Like, what is the patterns in your family? What's been passed down energetically? What thought impulses and vibrations have been imprinted through your lineage? Especially for, immigrants, first generation. Like, I'm a first generation immigrant, but, and who knows what that line holds, what trauma. My mom, has her dad, alcoholic. And my grandmother was under a lot of stress with that. I mean, raising a bunch of kids and dealing with an alcoholic husband, my goodness. And then those are passed down to my mom and those are passed down to me. So lots of stuff here. The active effort is newborn, fresh from the mint, whilst the passive effort is of less recent creation and, in fact, is often the result of vibratory impulses imparted in ages long past. The active effort makes its own way, brushing aside the impending vines and kicking from its path the obstructing stones. The passive effort travels along the beaten path. Okay, so I'm actually going to see, can I copy and paste this? Okay, I'm gonna see if ChatGPT can help me with this. Because I think he's making a bigger point that is beyond what I'm picking up right now. I wonder if it's gonna let me dictate. I'm reading, no. For whatever reason, Safari does not let me dictate. So let me get on this one. Okay, let's look at this together, y'all. I'm reading William Walker Atkinson's book, Thought Vibration. I'm reading chapter 3, and he's talking about thought impulses and imprints. I'm going to put a couple paragraphs. What does he mean by passive and active? Okay. So he's saying Atkinson's distinction, ChatGPT, between active and passive is one of the key ideas in thought vibration. Here's what he means. An active effort of the mind is a thought or impulse that arises fresh from the moment. It's new, original, and self-generated by your own will, desire, or decision. An example, you consciously decide, I'm going to write a book, and you begin outlining ideas. That impulse is active. It originates in your present mind. Okay, like a new idea in the moment. Something that hasn't happened before. Atkinson says this kind of thought makes its own way because it pushes into the world with energy, forging a new path rather than following an old one. A passive effort doesn't start fresh. It is carried along by something that already exists, like old programming that is passed on. So this is good. Active efforts are thought impulses that we originate, and then passive is from what has been programmed into us. So a passive effort doesn't start fresh. It is carried along by something that already exists. It can come from a memory of your own earlier active efforts, okay, or old programming that we have, habits and conditioning, the influence of another person's suggestion or vibration, ancestral impulses passed down through heredity. He even extends this to vibrations coming from the beginning of time. An example, you find yourself humming a tune because you heard someone else singing it, or you react with fear to a situation of childhood conditioning. That's passive. It's borrowed or inherited, not consciously chosen in the moment. Ooh. Passive effort travel the beaten path. So they are on well-worn neural pathways. They're repetitions of old impulses or influences. So that's like our subconscious mind. Passive is like the subconscious mind programming. Active is our conscious mind that can reprogram. The deeper point, Atkinson is making the case that active efforts are creative, powerful, and liberating. They originate in the conscious mind and can change the course of your life. Passive efforts are reactive, repetitive, and conditioned. They're the influence of the past, whether your own past actions, society's suggestions, or even ancestral impulses. So when he says active is newborn, fresh from the mint, versus passive, travels the beaten path, he's encouraging readers to become aware of when they're simply running on inherited impulses versus when they're generating fresh thought energy. Ooh, yeah, I love that. See? Always a student. This is more than just reading the book together, people. We're here to understand. I am tired. I need to go to bed. Okay, let's finish this. Okay. Whew. All right. The active effort is newborn, fresh from the mint, while passive effort is less recent from yourself, past, situations, or from your ancestors. The active effort makes its own way, brushing aside the impeding vines and kicking from its past. It's like making new pathways. It's mindfulness, making new neural pathways, new habits. And the passive effort takes it's already well worn, takes no energy, attention, effort, or focus. They're old habits. A thought impulse or motion impulse, originally caused by an active effort of faculty, may become, by continued repetition or habit, strictly automatic, the impulse given it by the repeated active effort, developing a strong momentum, which carries it on along passive lines until stopped by another active effort or its direction changed by the same cause. Yeah, so we are truly paving the path, like we're telling our body, we are reprogramming our body at every moment, every thought, what to do into new ways, or we're just sitting back and letting old programming run the way. On the other hand, thought impulses or motion impulses continued along passive lines may be terminated or corrected by an active effort. Yeah, so thought impulses, along passive, like old well-worn pathways may be overlaid, overridden. So like old programming can be overridden or corrected by a new active effort. The active function creates, changes, or destroys. Creates, changes, or destroys. The passive function carries on the work given by the active function and obeys orders and suggestions. That's like the subconscious mind obeys and orders and reacts to what the conscious mind is giving it. And so that's what takes repetition to create those new ways, those new roads, those new paths. The active function produces the thought habit or motion habit. It's like it creates your thoughts or behaviors and imparts to it the vibrations which carry it along the passive lines thereafter. The active function also has the power to send forth vibrations which neutralize the momentum of the thought habit or motion habit. It also is able to launch a new thought habit or motion or behavior with stronger vibrations, which overcomes and absorbs the first thought or motion and substitutes the new one. So the active produces a new thought or behavior, and it gives vibrations which carry along. It carries on that, it goes over the passive, well-worn lines, and it has the power to neutralize the momentum of old thought habits or old behaviors and launch new habits and behaviors. And the strong vibrations can overcome and absorb and just create new habits. All thought impulses or behaviors, once started on their errands, once start to move, continue to vibrate along passive lines until corrected or terminated by subsequent impulses imparted by the active function or other controlling power. The continuance of the original impulse adds momentum and forces to it and renders its correction or termination more difficult. This explains that which is called the force of habit. I think that this will be readily understood by those who have struggled to overcome a habit which had been easily acquired. The law applies to good habits as well as bad. The moral is obvious. Wow. Yeah, it's amoral. Your subconscious mind will take whatever you give it. It's like the law. Any seed you plant, it's going to take it. We'll have to finish this tomorrow, team, because this is a longer, oh wait, yeah, we'll finish this tomorrow. It's way past my bedtime. Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, I love this. Okay. Yeah. All right, we ended on that. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you all for your love and support. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know what you think. Part 1, Chapter 3, William Walker Atkinson's book, Thought Vibration. I hope you enjoyed that. We will continue tomorrow, my friends. Any questions? Let me know. If you want to work with me, let me know. All the information's below. I have a Higher Faculties free course. All the information is below there as well. It's a free gift. And then you can click on that link to see all of the other services I offer. So let me know. Have a beautiful evening. I hope you have a great weekend.